I have a model here that has two parts. Right now we're on the left part. So if you are looking in person, if you're coming to in-person labs, which you're not right now because I'm filming this during the pandemic, you will see these two models I'm going to do in the same video because they're on the same plaque, on the same base. I'm also doing this left-handed, so forgive me if I look a little bit awkward. This is a coronal slice through the head. If you forget what coronal means, then please pause and look that up. It should be obvious. I'm holding up the model, so I can't let go and show you on myself. But just to orient yourself, this is through the head, right? So these are the brain. These are the backs of the eyes. Here, they're not actually the eyes. They're like the eye sockets, but still. This is the nasal cavity with some sinuses. This is the tongue. And then here are teeth, which means that this bone here is the upper jawbone, which is the maxilla, not the palatine, because the palatine doesn't have any bones. And then these are the mandible. And I'm going to now go through like top to bottom what everything is. As far as this skull bone, you can't tell by just looking at this, or I can, but you can't, whether this cranial bone is the frontal or parietal bone. So I'm not going to ask you about the skull bone here. I'm also not going to ask you about the brain because we haven't gone over that yet, or the eyes. But I will talk about the nasal cavity. So my pencil is tracing the nasal cavity right now. Remember, the sinuses are continuous with the nasal cavity. So you see this passageway right here. This is the maxillary sinus, and this is also in the maxilla, right? Remember, we just said that with these teeth. So these are the maxillary sinuses. And between the eyes are the ethmoid sinuses. And these are the only sinuses that you can see in a coronal section of the head. Now the nasal conchae. In your lab manual, the model is slightly different. So in your lab manual, the superior nasal concha is not labeled because it is not shown. The angle is wrong, so it's not actually there in your lab manual. But on this model, it is. You could see here and here are the superior nasal conchae. These are the middle nasal conchae, and these are the inferior nasal conchae. And remember that the ethmoid bone makes up the superior and middle nasal conchae. So these are the ethmoid bone, and then the sinuses right next to it are going to be the ethmoid sinuses. And these are the inferior nasal conchae, which are their own bones. They are not a part of the ethmoid bone. So I'm just glancing at your lab manual figure 9, and that's all I need to cover for that model. And now, let me adjust this so that you can see the other half of the model here. Okay, so we're not going to talk about the brain, but later when we study the brain, you will have to look at this model to identify parts of the brain. For now, no. So remember the frontal